March 4th, 2024, and today we're here at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. The Pope is getting ready to do an audience in about 2 hours. Now, I was sitting down with all the audience earlier, but I decided to get up and walk around because I'm not going to sit still for 2 hours. I refuse. But it's a sight to see, you know. If you would have asked me maybe a year ago, I wouldn't have rather seen any other monument in the world than this square right here. This is the birthplace of the church, the cornerstone of the Christian faith. But as I walk around and as I witness the people in the Vatican, for example, I can't help but feel a little bit underwhelmed, you know? There's a story in the Bible. I don't remember the exact verses. Jesus goes to the church, to the temple, sorry. There was no church at that time. Goes to the temple. I believe it's right before Passover. And they're selling animals. They're selling offerings. They're selling this. They're selling that in the markets. And Jesus becomes enraged for the first time in his story. The first time we see Jesus upset. And he starts flipping tables and accosting the people that are the merchants that are selling these items during this holy time. Now, I'm not inside the actual basilica because it's currently closed for the audience. But what I will tell you is, since I got off the train, the metro, and walked down this entire street to get to the square, there's people selling stuff, selling offerings, selling rosaries, selling this, selling that. And it's not even like they're donations. They're just regular souvenirs. And this is in the line to get into the Vatican. So it just makes you think, you know, how fragile is some people's faith that they need offerings, they need to sell these offerings, they need to buy these rosaries and stuff like that to profess themselves. You don't need any offering to believe in a higher power. Consciousness lies within all of us. Christ consciousness lies within all of us. And time again in the Bible, Jesus reminds us of this. And he tells us to really unlock that Christ consciousness, that higher level of thinking, right? The golden rule, for example, treat thy neighbor as yourself. You walk around, you get into these lines to get into the Vatican, there's security, this and that. And there was this guy, for example, and he was walking by me, and he had a stroller with a baby or something, and he's like, get out of my way, get out of my way, I have a baby, can't you see? And we're all in line. We're not going anywhere. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I move. I let him go by. And then as he's walking by, he goes, stupid people. It's very choice words for the holy capital of the Catholic faith, you know? So it just goes to show that most people really live in a perpetual state of hell. When you talk to someone who doesn't know much about the faith, much about spirituality, much about religion, they believe that hell is a physical place. Heaven is a physical place. No, it's not true. We live on 3 realms of consciousness. The lowest is the physical realm. That's where I exist currently on an atomic level. That's where everything happens. Right? That's where everything happens physically, where if I slap you in the face, you'll feel it. If you slap me in the face, it might hurt a little bit, right? One step above that is the mental level. This is where Jesus says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Your thoughts become your reality. Your emotions become your reality. And your level of mental energy and mental emotion becomes your reality. That is the second level of consciousness that we live on. The third and final consciousness is that Christ consciousness, the spiritual realm. The spiritual realm is the highest form of consciousness. That's why when you see people in books like the Bible, Jesus Christ, or the Buddha, when he's enlightened, these people have reached Christ consciousness. That is where mental states like heaven and hell and purgatory exist. I believe me or you can reach a state of heaven in our mind through the act of prayer and meditation. Now, what is prayer? Prayer in reality is a deep meditation in which you connect with God, with that higher self, with that consciousness inside of you. And that is where you pull things from the metaphysical realm into the lowest form, the physical realm. That is where manifestation is done. That's why in the Bible Jesus says, I want to get this quote right because these are uncut videos. Jesus says, when you pray for something, believe that you already have it and it will be so. And in another verse, he says, ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door shall be opened to you. He explicitly states that nothing is outside of our sphere of influence in this world, in this physical realm. We should only have it metaphysically on the spiritual realm. Bring that to our mental consciousness. Focus on that and the energy and the emotions that it gives us. Because what is emotion? Emotion is energy in motion. Once we can do that, once we can align with being rich, once we can align with having a good relationship, once we can align with making more sales in your business, any kind of manifestation you want, that is the point in time in which that becomes a physical reality. So, on the contrary, this brings me back to my previous point, most people live in a state of perpetual hell. On the spiritual realm, they're in hell. They have a bad subconscious, a guilty subconscious. They have these opinions of themselves that they think people might not like them because the way they look, their race, the way they sound. They think other people are stupid. They think other people are judgmental. All these self-conscious, subconscious beliefs that people have affects their mental state, affects their mental thoughts, which affects their physical reality. So, the key to manifestation is being able to alter those subconscious thoughts and remove those conscious blocks that you might have. Once you can do that, you can transmute that into a positive experience, into a positive subconscious. And once you reach that state of neutrality, you can make them positive. So you have to go from the hell to neutrality to heaven. It doesn't happen all at once. I've done it before and it took me months of hour-long sessions a day of meditation. But I've done it. That's why I know it's real. People live in a state of hell. The poor think that they need more money. They need more money, right? The people who live in heaven, they're abundant in everything. They have all the money they want in their mind, even if it's not a physical reality. You speak to any rich person, they all knew they were going to get rich before they got rich. All of them. Every person I've spoken to who's rich, they knew they were going to be rich before they were rich. The poor think, if I could just get a better tax break, if I could just get less bills, if I could just save more money, if I could just spend less money. that mentality will never make you rich, and that will keep you in a perpetual state of hell. Now, I'm just using money as an example here because it's the simplest form of what I'm talking about. But that could go for anything you wish to manifest in life. So, again, it's beautiful to be here at the holy capital of my faith. But don't forget, nothing is outside of your sphere of influence. No man or woman is above you in the eyes of God. In the eyes of God, we are all one. In consciousness, we are all one. There's a lot of esoteric knowledge the church itself, admittedly, hides from the people. And it's up to you to dig and find that out. And once you do, you'll be better off without it. You'll be better off with it. And I'll leave that in because these are uncut, but I did misspeak there. To wrap up, the truth will set you free, so search for it.